timer. Is it all
Yeah, I was going to try and work on posting a set of minutes, but it won't let me log on to me. So it must be whatever they've done to the back of this computer, that this computer doesn't have the...
Oh. I know what you mean.
It just doesn't let me plug an Ethernet cable into the network adapter. Okay, so that's exactly what they've done. They've done something that now...
So we're all, well, John Ross can hear us, so that's good. We're all good. And the timer is good. Do you want me to test it?
I did.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
Yes, I know. You were out of people.
You were so quick. Beautiful.
Okay. Yep. Beautiful thing. Okay. So if I can't do this on this, then I might as well.
Hi, Roy.
Hello, Claudia. Looks like one of my cameras is kaput.
Oh. It's just one of those days.
Yeah, but the password is working.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. He needed a YouTube password. I'm like, huh? He says, is Evander going in tonight? I said, no. He's sailing to Alaska. Oh, so I can't call him. I said, no.
He probably right now is out of complete range, I'm assuming.
Come on.
I know.
Yeah.
Take time off.
Exactly. He's got that magic watch and everything.
To not go to a place where there's Wi-Fi.
That.
Well, everything was working fine in a closed session, like Wi-Fi, network-wise, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay.
But
Looks
if one
like
of our cameras is not working, what will that mean?
it's camera number 1. It's not working. It's blocked.
Okay.
So
Can you get by without using it?
oh yeah. The
I mean,
problem
you don't
is
have-
I wouldn't have a presenters from the video.
We only have 2.
Yeah.
So it's not like a...
Yeah, but we have that camera just as a backup, on the table.
Yeah,
on the Zoom.
that one at least it gets onto the Zoom.
Yeah,
Yes.
it would be on the Zoom.
People here can see them. People on Zoom can see them on Zoom.
Yes.
So we're good.
Yeah.
If any camera had to fail, that's the right one. Think of the silver lining here.
The most important is camera number 4, because that's major.
I'm going to say, I was going to guess that must be.
And camera number 3, because it's live.
No.
Oh, come on.
No.
Come on.
We're like wallpaper.
No.
Blend into the background.
That is my favorite
We should
camera.
start wearing more of this color, Lorraine. To
Yeah.
blend, to truly
Yeah.
blend. We're gonna...
We'll just look like
No,
a
not
wall
blending.
paneling with eyes.
That spells why we have just like 2
We look
beautiful,
like ghosts.
2 beautiful faces.
Well, that's very fun.
For a
Thank
change.
you. Did you have a nice, did you enjoy your weekend? Did you spend time with your granddaughter?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
How
yeah.
old is she?
5.5.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
And
she's
not forget to
kindergarten.
tell her that she's 5. No, Janet.
No,
5
she's
and a half.
5 and a half. Very yes.
And I'm telling her 5 3/4 because her birthday is coming in June.
Okay.
She'll be 6.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. How time flies, eh?
It's, yeah.
And I have a problem because she's taking the ballet classes, and whenever she's at our place, so she's like, Janet, it's Polish for grandma.
Yeah.
Would you do that? And she's been split.
Oh,
And I said, oh yeah, I can do that. Easy. Easy.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
in another lifetime.
I'm getting just nervous and
Yeah.
restless. She's rubbing my face. Judging. And
See? That's all that
the
you need.
judging is done.
That is all that you need.
So we want to send you an email about this camera?
Can you? And then, because I don't want to forget it, and then I'll forward it on to, well, IT, because I know that they're waiting for PJS to come in here, so they need to look at that as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they're coming in, they're supposed to be coming in tomorrow, to
But
check
they haven't
every wire or
released
every
information.
everything.
So, yeah.
Okay, then I'll send it tonight.
And then I'll forward it on to IT
Yeah,
for sure.
just let them know that's that camera behind the mail.
What do you call it?
Number one.
Number one camera.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you don't mind sending me an email.
Yeah, that's the camera behind the mail.
Numero uno, camera.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you so much.
And- And tell Evangel that it's not fair. He's somewhere and I'm here.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Helena von Carter.
Oh, I like her.
Yeah, well, her,
She's so good in the Queen. Sorry, the Crown. Yeah, she plays,
Yeah, looking good.
Margaret. Sorry, Margaret.
well, she did this thing about grandpa.
Portrayal is incredible. Like, I just think she's so,
She is her own person. Like her hair is like all over the place, then she can throw in a hat, she looks so cool, like she's just got really nice features. And I think, so her grandmother was maybe Vivian.
yeah,
von
but
Carter.
she rubbed elbows with the royal
They
family.
were lord and lady, yeah, and so then, but her, on her father's, no, on her mother's side, they were Polish Jews. And her he actually went in the military, led these Jewish people get across the stage and work out the politician. He signed all their passports, and he figured if he saved
Wow.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then he paid the price. They sent him and his family to Russia. He was punished.
Right, you should, but
And you
anything
get to see that, it's really interesting.
Huh?
So, okay, I was watching The Crown for a bit, but I guess I need to go on Netflix.
So she would be season 2 or 3? Hey, I just wanted to confirm, are you Mr. Nathan Davidovich?
Yeah,
Hi, I'm Claudia. So we've got you
so
as
how come they don't
the-
have delegations listed here?
We don't have that for agenda delegations, we at the beginning of the meeting.
Why isn't it listed?
We don't note agenda delegations on the agenda, if there are non-agenda delegations, then, long in advance, then that becomes an agenda item. But we have to be registered as a speaker, remember?
Oh, I see. What is that?
It'll be at the beginning, so we'll just get through, and then after this item, we'll introduce the speakers, okay?
Yeah, then put it down. I'll be down. That's
It normally on the agenda. It might be more, maybe or later for the next.
why should put down the speaker.
Well, it's at the beginning, so we'll call you, okay?
Hey, Andy. Good. You?
So they want to tear down the RCMP building. Which one? On Heather. it's disgraced, and it's heritage building. Doesn't matter who the new owners are. The city, because the First Nation said it's a bad idea to have, because it was a police building, you know, but it's, yeah, I don't agree with that either, you know, because the heritage, there's one rule, if it's designated as
Mayor
heritage.
Brody,
Yo,
I just wanted to, just further to an earlier email I sent out under agenda, I'll just indicate the removal of PWT from the agenda, the minutes,
Yeah.
because we did not receive them in time for, we thought we'd be able to provide them on
Alright,
table
so-
today.
But, yeah, no, Vancouver Council, they don't.
okay. Anything else? Any other changes?
No, that is it, and
Yeah, you know,
we have, because we have two registered speakers, we've got the timer, and would you like me to read out the statement?
Yes. Well, just a minute. If there's nobody, I don't need you to if there's nobody else here. If there's just those two guys, they'll be all right.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll be all right. Am I one of them?
No, no,
Okay.
not on balance, no.
I couldn't believe it, I beat you in here. I thought I forgot my iPad. Yes, I did.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call to order the meeting of Richmond City Council for Tuesday, May 24, 2022. I think someone needs to mute themselves. Okay? Yep, that's better. All right, may I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
Yes, Your Worship, we have one agenda deletion, and that is on CNCL 3, and it's item 6.4. This is under committee minutes. The May 18th PWT minutes are not part of this agenda.
All right, may I have a motion on the agenda with that change? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. And now, may I have a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. So we have two delegations signed up tonight, and I'll take them in the order that we heard from them. The first one is by Zoom. It's John Roston on the market rental policy, item number 10. So, Mr. Roston, go ahead. As you know, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. So most of you were present for my remarks at planning last week, so I won't repeat what I said then, but rather provide some additional information. I quoted CMHC apartment housing starts data for 2018 to 2021, showing Richmond trailing the surrounding municipalities on rental housing by constructing a much smaller proportion of purpose-built rental and a much larger proportion of strata condos, mainly for sale to investors. So to update that, we now have the data for the first quarter of 2022, so very recent. It shows Richmond in last place with 19% rental and 81% strata condos. The Tri-Cities have 22% rental, Burnaby 26% rental, Vancouver 42% rental, and Surrey 52% rental. Delta had very few apartment housing starts, but they were 100% rental. So these other municipalities have very ambitious plans to increase the proportion of rental even more, while you seem satisfied with setting the bar low at 30%. Burnaby has over 10,000 rental units in the pipeline. Vancouver has committed to building 10,000 rental units per year for the next 10 years. Correcting for population size, Richmond would need to build 3,000 rental units per year instead of the few hundred that will result from 30% rental. One question at planning was whether other municipalities have implemented rental tenure zoning. The simple answer is yes. Vancouver, for example, did so on a large scale in December 2021. It expanded certain types of existing commercial zoning, which limits building height to 13.8 meters, by allowing much greater height if rental tenure housing is added on top of the ground floor commercial. The allowed height is increased even further if 20% of the rental housing is below market. There is no need to apply for rezoning in that situation. The ground floor must continue to be used for commercial activities to ensure that goods and services are available nearby for those living above in the rental housing. Now, in Richmond's case, Richmond's commercial CA zoning in the city center limits building height to 12 meters, except for hotels, which can go up to 45 meters. So that leaves a lot of room between 12 and 45 meters to allow increased building height for adding 100% rental tenure housing on top of existing single-story commercial buildings. Now, further to Councillor Liu's question at planning, we are not advocating putting rental housing everywhere, but rather starting with the city center, close to mass transit, and where many people can walk to work, and then expanding it to some, but not all, arterial roads. Councillor Hobbs asked about any disadvantages of pre-zoning for 100% rental tenure. It adds considerable land value to the existing single-family or single-story commercial zoning, but not as much value as allowing strata condos. So those of you who are friendly with strata condo developers will find they're very unhappy and will stop bidding up the price of land after it is zoned for rental tenure. By permitting only 100% rental above existing single-story commercial buildings in the city center, you will cap land values and allow rental housing to be profitable. Rental housing developers will stop avoiding enrichment and start building the rental housing we so desperately need. It's interesting to note, incidentally, that the Urban Development Institute wrote a letter to council in 2019, and the letter was complaining about downzoning of property for rental tenure, but they began the letter by praising upzoning for rental tenure in exactly the manner that we are recommending to you today. And I will quote, UDI was originally supportive of rental tenure zoning if it was used to encourage the construction of more purpose-built rental housing. And that is done in conjunction with incentives. So exactly what we're advocating. Continuing with the quote, for example,
Sir,
if a local government upzoned.
Sir, you're out of time now. Can you wrap it up?
Can I just finish the quote? It's one sentence.
Sure.
For example, if a local government upzoned a single family area to multifamily or a commercial zone into residential, it would be appropriate to require the new use and or density to be purpose-built rental housing. So amen to that, and that's from UDI. Thank you very much.
We have a question from Councillor Day.
Hello, Mr. Rawson. Thank you for that. I didn't realize that UDI had taken that position. Would you be kind enough to send us was it a quote in a newspaper, or was it a report, or where did you find that?
It was a letter to city staff, and it had to do back in 2019. It's in July 2019. Had to do with the question of rental tenure zoning for existing properties that are 100% rental. And they felt in some cases that was down zoning, and they were objecting to that. So most of the letters about that, but I'll be glad to send you all copies of it, and I will after the meeting. But they were very much in favor of what we're proposing, which is upzoning in the manner we've described.
Just a follow-up question, please, Mayor Brody. Okay, so you're really making me think here. I'm thinking we've heard so many complaints about the two 7-Elevens that have closed. One is at Williams and number 3 Road, and one at Steveston and number 1 Road. Is it the vision that something like that was like a commercial building could potentially be maybe rebuilt with more, commercial at the bottom and then housing up above that's rental?
Absolutely, it's a perfect example. And you'll notice that Vancouver actually requires that the ground floor be restored to commercial. So whoever owns that property, rather than pricing the 7-Eleven, out of existence, would be forced really to put it back or something similar.
Wow, very interesting. Thank you.
Councillor Au.
Yes, Worship, I have a question to Mr. Roston, and perhaps staff can also answer this question. Now, Mr. Roston, I find the figures that you provide very interesting. And how do we know that we are actually comparing apples to apples? Like, when you say we have 19% rentals in Richmond and 26% in Burnaby, 42% in Vancouver. I mean, I think this is really, interesting. And are we making a fair comparison? I'm just raised this point.
Yes, and I can provide you with the data. The 2018 to 2021 data, as you know, is published in the Richmond News, and they required me to send them all of the data before they published that. They had the same question you've got, how is this being calculated? And it comes, the CMHC reports housing starts. They take the permits, the building permits issued by the city, and they actually go around to the sites to see if the foundation has been completed. And if the foundation has been completed, that's a housing start. Then they subdivide it by type of housing. And in the case of apartments, which is, so the data, as I said, these are apartment housing starts. They subdivide that into rental and strata condo. So, and these, they give the numbers, and then I just added them up and calculated the percentages, but I'd be pleased to supply those calculations.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next delegation, where is my list? Our next delegation is Nathan Davidowitz in person. He wants to talk about the minutes regarding TransLink delegations, which is item 6 sub 2. So please come forward, sir. Yeah, sit over there, please. And you've got 5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. On Thursday, TransLink Board of Directors and Mayor's Council going to approve the 10-year plan and investment plan of TransLink. Not a single city council in the Metro Vancouver has approved that. There hasn't been a single report, independent report about those plans. The provincial government is very happy that TransLink is going to approve it on Thursday because it's such an unambitious plan that takes them off the hook of spending money on transit. They'll have to spend very little based on that plan. For Richmond, there is hardly anything at all. We don't have the return of the interurban to Steveston. You can do that at $10 million a kilometer, according to Municipal Transit Solutions from Ontario. And TransLink doesn't want to hear them or anything. And I understand you don't want to hear from them either. But I don't know. But that's just one item. But I mean, the first item is returning the bus service to the pre-COVID level. We are the only major area in Canada that has not returned the bus service. You have 7 bus routes in Richmond that have been cut back from anywhere from 10% to 100%. And so, that's very disturbing. There is no mention of the maximum walking distance of 5 minutes or 400 meters to the nearest bus stop. Many places in Richmond are way farther away than that, and people can't use transit. In other cities in the province, they've already raised the flag, the white flag, and say, we can't meet Clean BC 2030 targets. But there isn't enough money for transit to provide that in order to get more ridership. And the province set the target, but without any money to achieve the target. And so there is a whole bunch of problems there. The plan by TransLink is also to increase the fares for the next 10 years. Most other cities are reducing fares, moving to free fares or partial free fares. Today, Lisbon just announced, free fares for 23 and under and 65 and over and so forth. There's over 1,000 cities worldwide that have either free fares or partial free fares. And here we are discouraging ridership, and and that's exactly what TransLink has been doing for the last 25 years. The ridership per capita has not increased for 25 years. The ridership increased in numbers, but not per capita, because the population has increased over the last 25 years. The mode split in Richmond is less than 20% for transit and active transportation. It's so low compared to other major cities of similar size. And as I said, we will never achieve the Clean BC targets, and so I don't know. It's up to the council to decide what they want to do. I'm meeting with MLA Henry Yar on Friday. He's very concerned about the whole transit situation in Richmond, and we'll see what happens. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there anybody else wishing to speak to council on items on the agenda? All right, may I have a motion to rise and report? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have a number of items on the agenda. First of all, we have the receipt of the committee minutes. We have the Touchstone Family Association Restorative Justice Contract Renewal for 2023 to 2025 and the Annual Performance Outcome Evaluation Report. Car hailing fines. Election Procedure Amendment Bylaw for mail ballot voting. Referral response on the proposed mandatory market rental housing policy and proposed rental housing parking changes. There's the application to the Government of Canada Active Transportation Fund, the award of a contract for on-call roofing contractor, and a change order approval for the EV charging infrastructure and management provider. May I have a motion to approve those by general consent? So it's moved and seconded. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just two matters, actually, a very good agenda and some good reports, but two matters I'd like to just make a comment on. And one, I was glad to be, when we engaged Touchstone Family Association way back when, those of us that were on council at the time, we were looking at problem gambling. And they set up a program with the province of British Columbia and what have you, and we got involved with Touchstone. But the restorative justice contract, very, very important, and I'm extremely pleased to shout out for Touchstone and the good work that they've done over the years. I've used the system myself in the Vancouver school system with restorative justice, and finding at that level it works, and obviously with Touchstone, with their councils and what have you, has worked very, very well. It's people will look at and saves the court system and saves the taxpayers, et cetera. But to me, more importantly, it involves the clients, and it really is effective with regard to the clients, the perpetrators of a wish, and the victims. And to me, that was the greatest satisfaction we were able to see when we're using it. And I understand the numbers to a certain extent have dropped down, which hopefully in our community, that's a good thing. So I thank not only staff for the report, but the evaluation report. I think that I hope to see that on the web so that the public can see it. It's extremely good feedback, and when you look at it, to me, it's very important that that gets out there. Now, hopefully that, and I'm glad to see we're going to have an extended contract, and justly so, Your Worship. I think it's very worthwhile. The other is the introduction I wanted to speak on, Your Worship, was the mandatory market rental housing policy and the parking changes. And I'm very pleased to see that come forward on it. The fact that we have the low income at 15%. We're now putting 15% for apartment 60 and over into the system. The one thing, and we had the delegation tonight too, and a question was asked, are we doing apples and oranges or apples and apples? The key here, with any rental, and nobody talks about it, is what incentives were given to get those percentages in those communities. You know, it's great to compare communities, but every community is different. And we're doing a Richmond model, and I'm happy to see us move in this direction. But we need to see what incentives have been offered and what is the impact of those incentives to development and to increasing market rental. There's no question we in Richmond and the rest of the province in Canada need rental with the number of people that are coming in daily into our country, but also into our community. I'm really pleased to see that the reduction in parking within the Canada line, I'd like to see that eventually be reduced to zero so that we force people to take public transit. We're talking about ridership and or at least one car at the most, but let's go with what we've got now, a reduction of 50% within 800 meters, and on the other sites, a reduction of 30%. To me, Your Worship, that's important. And the other thing too, as we evolve this particular policy and it gets implemented, I think we need to look at further incentives to encourage rental housing. I think it's extremely important. I think we need to look at areas, whether it be commercial or, and to be quite frank with you, industrial, where it's clean, that bottom floor become commercial or industrial, and we go up, but not 3 or 4 stories. I think in the downtown core, at one time, we had 39 towers proposed. We're not anywhere near that, and I think we've got to go up to our 14, 15 stories in some areas, not everywhere, but where it's feasible and well-planned, and have the commercial underneath or whatever it is. And I think that's coming. And that's the only way we're going to continue to get, in my opinion, rental housing, because all we own is the airspace. And that's all that's left. We don't have the land space, but we have the airspace. Because too often, we've got to continue to provide the amenities. And this concerns me about Lansdowne and City Center here, where we approve their plan, and I didn't really like Lansdowne, to be honest with you, but I went with it, is are the amenities going to be there for people? You don't want to be going to Abbotsford to get your bucket of paint, or you get your printing, or you want to be going to Langley. Well, many of our shops are already out in Langley that were in Aberdeen, for example, and in Richmond Center. A number of our people have moved out there for reasons. So with that, Your Worship, I believe in the areas that we've got and identified, and I think it's a good report. It's a step in the right direction. It's a first step along the line of many steps to come, and I'm looking forward to us evaluating it and seeing what happens over the next 6 months, and hopefully look at purposeful housing, look at co-ops, look at the city purchasing property, and building on it as well. That's something we might be able to do with a builder. I'm not going to say a developer or investor, but a builder to build appropriate things. So thank you to staff for that, and that's all I'll talk about tonight, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through you, the chair, I'll be supporting all the items on the consent agenda as well. And I'll just talk to 3 of those issues. And the first one is the Touchstone Family Association and Restorative Justice. I think that was actually an excellent report, and I'm pleased to support the recommendation for the renewal. Restorative justice is a very effective tool in the justice system, and this report contains a lot of data on recidivism, and victim and offender participation rates in the study were actually really healthy. And as was the feedback and analysis in the report, those are on page 71, I believe. The other part of it that I appreciated a lot was a strategic plan, and in particular, priority 3 and 4, which focuses on schools and on the community. So that's a report worth reading, actually quite positive. The second issue I wanted to comment on was the number 8, it's ride hailing. This is a very serious issue. Anything that we have people being transported in, whether they're taxis or illegal ride-hailing in this case. It's a serious health and community safety issue. So the key to it is regulation and oversight and also enforcement. And so it's crucial in providing a reasonable level of protection to the public. So I'm glad that we're addressing that and moving forward on it and working with the industry as well as the provincial government. The last thing that I'll comment on tonight is the mandatory market rental. It's important that we increase all housing options in the city, and rentals are definitely a big part of that. I think it's important to produce a diverse housing stock, and it's a priority, and rentals are a priority as well. This includes, among other things, 100% market rentals. And this recommendation, I did have some concerns with, quite frankly, because I don't think it focuses quite enough on 100% market rentals. And another concern I had with this report, although I'm supporting it, is the economic analysis by Rollo. And one of the concerns in a nutshell is that it talks about the 15% across the board being reasonable or good for most developments, but not all. So it does beg the question, if not all, then why are we doing it across the board? But nevertheless, I'll support it because there is a built-in review process. I think that'll be very important to see what effect this has, whether it has a positive impact in a net way or not. And the other positive about it is I think that it actually will increase contributions to the Affordable Housing Reserve. So I think that's important. But just to finish this one up, I think our emphasis has to shift from policies like this that kind of, not the fringe, but certain percentages. I think we have to shift to focusing really a lot more on what has been discussed already tonight, and that is finding locations and working with various stakeholders to develop 100% purpose-built rental buildings. And there are a couple sites that are being looked at right now, and I think we have to look at ways to incentivize it, as Councillor McNulty has just referred to, and by working with builders to get that done. I think 100% rentals are the part of this scenario that we really have to focus on. And with that, I'll be supporting all the items on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be supporting all the items on the consent agenda as well. I'll just speak to 4 of them briefly. So I appreciated that the second delegate there bringing up something from the committee minutes. The fact that we did have those presentations from TransLink on their TransLink Transport 2050 plan. And the fact that it was just like receiving a presentation. So correctly noted that it wasn't something that we were to approve or bring forward to this council meeting. But nonetheless, it was littered with items that were a concern for me, and I did ask a fair number of questions of them and have more to come. So I know it's a plan, and there's some aspects of it that are mentioned in our minutes on council package page 40, saying that there is the significant improvement to double the local bus service, to make the Highway 91 corridor the highest quality bus service. But how to measure that quality may be the biggest challenge that they will have when we don't have the lanes for it. And then, so moving on to item number 9, that's the election procedure amendment. So to go to the full mail ballot voting option for all residents. And as we did see the uptick in provincial and federal usage of that, I do see that as the way to go as we hear about other viruses and other concerns, and you never know. So it's great to have that option for all of us. Item number 10, as has been mentioned, and as the first delegate spoke to, the mandatory market rental housing. So this is exactly why a few months ago when we were discussing Polygon, to say, hey, put a hold on it, because we could be getting higher percentages out of their 1,290 residential units that council at the day approved. So this is exactly why there was members on the public and members on council saying, hey, there's no rush, we don't need to approve this right now. Let's wait till staff come back with this referral, and here it is in front of us today. unfortunate events here to have the timing in the wrong order. I do support what is in this referral response. So the increasing the percentage is good. Reducing parking in certain areas for sure is good. As was mentioned, the new statistics are out, and Richmond is not leading the way in this category. And you just have to talk to someone who's currently renting, and they're being told that they're going to have to pay nearly double what they're currently paying, or they look at the availability and find next to nothing. So those are the people who are hurt most by the existing housing policies, and we need to do better. And I think the going to that 100% market rental tenure and purpose-built rental projects is the way to go. And finally, item number 12, I was also pleased that we're awarding a contract for a roofing contractor who does support the living wage and pays their staff adequately for the work that they do. And so with that, I'll support all the items on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Yeah, sure. I would like to have a few comments and questions on some items. The first one is item 7, the Touchstone Restorative Justice Program. I'm happy to see that this program is working, and as a mental health professional, I know that this program is very important, and I've seen the positive outcomes and results for young people who committed some kind of minor offenses at a young age. And I think a penalty or punishment should be the last resort, not the first one. So this program has provided a very effective outcome for the young people. Now, I'm glad to see that on page 58, saying that there's improvement in the length of time for the process in 2021. And I'm also pleased to know that Touchstone comment that they have enough resources and volunteers to carry on with this program. Because I think time is a very critical factor in making the program effective. If the process takes too long, or the time when the minor offense was committed, and the time of the system, the process taking place is too long, I think it would be, well, I won't say ineffective, but somehow the effectiveness would be reduced. So I'm glad that they are much improved in 2021 in terms of the time, and also saying that the resources, which was very short off in the past, is now adequate for Touchstone. So I'm happy to see this new development. And the other item is the car hailing fines for passengers. Number 8, I have a few questions to staff. Now, when I look at the topic of this item, it's called, fines for passengers. However, in the recommendation, probably I think it's not clear. Item 1, the letter be written to PTB requesting an examination of penalties for illegal ride-hailing services. So are we talking about passengers, drivers, or companies?
Councillor, I think that heading came from the original form of the motion, which was not approved by committee. And you're right, it should have been changed. There is no reference that I have read in items 1, 2, or 3, or the additional matter that refer to passengers.
Right,
So-
exactly. So, I mean, I think,
So it's not passengers.
okay. So then are we talking about the drivers or companies? And companies?
Well, I would think that it could be either of them. A letter is going to be written accordingly.
Okay, and then I would ask staff, what are the penalties for drivers right now? Did they got a fine with their cars being
Can
impounded?
staff answer that? Do you know what the penalties are right now? For the
Through your
drivers?
worship to Councillor Au, there's 2 categories of penalties. I'll begin first with the city's penalty. It is essentially operating without a business license. And then there's a series of penalties that can be issued under the Passenger Transportation Act, as well as the Motor Vehicle Act. I'll talk about the 3 most common ones that are typically used. One is operating without a license or permit under the Passenger Transportation Act. The second is the operating with the wrong classification of a license. To operate one of these ride-hailing vehicles, you need a Class 4 license, which actually has a criminal background check. It's far more rigorous to obtain. And the third most common penalty is operating a vehicle without evidence of a commercial vehicle inspection. Those are the typical 3 provincial tickets that are issued. And in one incident, you could usually get a set of fines that ranges from $1,500 to $5,000 on the provincial side if they're frequent offenders. In the case of the city side, it's typically around the $500 range.
Okay, so as being mentioned, I think illegal car hailing is a very important issue here and serious. And I believe that we have to take effective measures to curb it. And I think we should not target the passengers. We should target those people who are providing the service first. And I also believe that unless we have more penalties, more severe penalties for the companies or for the drivers, this is not going to be gone. So I would suggest that we should explore the possibility, not only imposing fines, not just impounding those cars, but also taking away the driver's license. So I think we should explore all those options. And I think we also need to write to the concerned authorities that we should find effective measures to target those companies because they hire these people to provide the service. So I hope that the letters would be strong enough and also exhaust those options.
Councillor, do you want to suggest putting the wording in both 1 and 2, which would say for drivers, for ride-hailing drivers and companies?
Yes, sure.
In both?
Yeah.
I think that's a friendly, is there anyone opposed to that? Okay, so that's in 1 and 2.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, and I also cite examples such as, taking away licenses as one means of punishment. And the other item I want to talk about is item 10, the rental housing policy and rental housing parking charges. And I have to admit that I'm only supporting this to move forward reluctantly. I was reluctant in the beginning with this recommendation because all along, I think the rental housing provision is very limited in Richmond. And also we have a big problem that we need to address as soon as possible. And the recommendation being made by staff in this report is an improvement, but not enough. I always suggest that we should ask for more or high percentage for bigger projects. And of course, staff responded to my request in the report. However, I still feel that we should dig deeper into the problem, and especially in the economic analysis report, saying that unless we have a means to cool off the land cost, it's not going to encourage rental housing supply. So I am only reluctantly supporting this moving forward because I think it's not enough. And in particular, I wanted to ask staff to respond to the information being provided by Mr. Ralston earlier. Are we comparing apples to apples? Because in the past, we always say that we are the leader in terms of providing rental supply. So are we a leader?
Through your worship, Councillor Au. Yes, there's a number of factors when we're looking at statistics supplied by CMHC, Statistics Canada, whatever it may be. So we need to take a deep dive into those stats. The stats that Mr. Ralston has shared with us in the past, and I can't speak for the statistics he was talking about today, generally it's just showing market rental units that have been brought onto the market. It doesn't indicate below or low-end market rental units or non-market housing, so there is some gaps in that data. We're happy to sit down with Mr. Ralston and look over the other data that he's shared with us tonight. Richmond, I would say, is definitely a leader in rental housing. We have the low-end market rental housing program, which is citywide, applies to all developments, big or small. We do have the cash and lieu component, of course, for smaller developments. And we've applied the same philosophy to the market rental proposal that's in front of you today, and that's citywide as well. So we feel that with the market rental proposal, we'll significantly increase market rental units, but it is one slice of the pie. 100% market rental and looking at city land and whatnot are certainly larger pieces of the pie that we are currently reviewing.
Okay, very good. So I think if the comparison is fair, I think we have a big problem, when we compare ourselves to the other cities. And I don't want to hold up the process by referring this back to staff for more information. So I would support this going to go forward. However, I would like staff to provide us with more information regarding those figures and comparisons. And I think perhaps, we can address some of the issues at the public hearing. So I would support this moving forward on the condition that we've got more information, more analysis of the data, and also we hear what the public is going to say at public hearing. So,
All right, thank you. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda and just want to speak to two. Number 7, the Touchstone Family Association Restorative Justice Contract Renewal 2023 to 2025 and Annual Performance Outcome Evaluation Report. The city first entered into a 3-year agreement with Touchstone Family Association in 2008 for the provision of restorative justice services in Richmond. So we are in our 15th year, and this report tonight recommends another 3 years. As all of council knows, restorative justice is an approach to justice that focuses on the needs of the victims and the offenders, as well as the community involved. Victims take an active role in the process, and offenders are encouraged to take responsibility for their actions. Restorative justice also provides help for the offender in order to avoid future offenses. And thank you to staff for a great report and to Touchstone Family Association for the work that they do and the continued value and benefit provided to our community. Number 10, the referral response proposed mandatory market rental housing policy and proposed rental housing parking changes. Well, a lot has been said already, so I'll be brief. I will support the recommendation on the floor. So there'll be a mandatory 15% of the habitable floor area in new developments for market rental housing for developments with more than 60 units, and townhouse and apartment developments that are less than 60 would have the options to contribute cash in lieu or make use of an associated bonus density and lower parking ratio to construct market rental units. There are provisions for in-stream applications whereby they could be exempt if they meet certain timelines for first readings and or final adoption. And I think this acknowledges the practice that we've been following and also the work done by the development and does put a timeline there. So it does hold their feet to the fire and does keep the project moving along. Other people have said this, but I'm glad to see that there is a plan. There is a report back in 2 years where we can look at the pros and the cons. And I think we really need to evaluate that and see the impact to the number of applications, developments, and thereby units, if any. And as has been said, there is much more to do. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to Councillor Steves. Harold?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to make a couple of comments on the rental housing report. I'm more inclined to look at the next couple of years rather than what's happening right now. We're in the unfortunate situation where some years ago, over the last number of years, we've had some very strong official community plans. And when you bring the official community plan in, it tells you what's going to be built in that particular location, and it inflates the values of the properties. And unless you put in your official community plan, and this is what I'm suggesting we should be doing next year with the new council next year or thereafter, is when you expand and change the official community plan, designate areas for affordable housing and rental housing so it doesn't inflate the house prices. when I was first elected to Richmond Council, the first affordable housing we built was some on Bryan Road and number 3 Road. There was some in East Richmond, the co-op across the street from me. They were all built without the benefits of an official community plan. So when the governments, whether it was a local government or a co-op or whatever, purchased a property, they simply paid residential prices for the land. They didn't have to pay an inflated price. And I'd say probably half the co-ops were bought that way. Others were, like the one at Terra Nova, was a negotiated deal when Terra Nova was developed, that we negotiated with the developer to get the prices down. So I think it's really important that the official community plan not inflate the values, that the city find a way to capture the lift to provide market rental and affordable and various other types of co-op and other housing. And I think that's the way you'll get it, because if you have to buy into the market after you've inflated the price, it becomes very, very difficult. So I think that that's something that really has to be thought of very, very carefully over the next few years. And Richmond should be able to do it when the new community plan is developed, because we probably can increase the density along, or some of us are suggesting it, increasing the density along some of our arterial roads more than they are now. And I'd say it's time we started increasing the density in the center of the subdivisions as well. Because in my opinion, by 2050 or 2060, most single-family homes are either going to be, the big ones in Richmond will all be rooming houses, and the idea of a single-family home will be a bit of a museum piece, because people are simply going to have to live in higher density as our population grows. So that's the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
Worship, I too will be supporting everything on tonight's consent agenda. I will mention a couple items: the Touchstone Family Association Restorative Justice contract renewal. I'd like to thank Touchstone for their continued provision of this valuable program, and thank the rest of council for continuing their contract. I was invited to an RJ Restorative Justice session some years back, and I saw firsthand the healing on the part of the people who felt victimized by the actions of the offender. The offender had sprayed a swastika on a fence, and the people who felt victimized were able to share with him how they felt fearful. They felt re-traumatized by seeing these swastikas, these signs, after they had spent time themselves as Holocaust survivors. The young offender got to go to the Holocaust Museum with one of the local rabbis and learn more about the whole situation, and he learned why his actions were upsetting, and he was able to make amends, to say sorry to people. And we saw him grow personally, we saw him develop as a leader and an advocate to fight hate. So, it was a really moving opportunity to see what instead could have been someone elevated to adult court, charged for a hate crime, and end up fully in the judicial system to actually instead move forward as a leader to fight the actions that he had actually performed. So it was really moving, and I'm glad we're part of it. I'm also glad for number 8 that we're able to work with our representative to YVR. We're actually going to, Mr. Dan Nomura is going to take our position on illegal ride hailing to the board of YVR. So many times we found out a person's first ride with one of these illegal ride hailing companies is at the airport when visitors or newcomers first arrive in Richmond, and they become sort of entrenched using the same one. And so hopefully YVR can work with us to help stop this. I'd also like to make some comments on the market rental housing. I think 15% is a good start. It might be a little bit onerous to some of the developers, and I know Councillor McNulty did mention the Lansdowne project, and the Lansdowne project, they've come forward with what their ideas are. They're already in the process of getting funding, trying to figure out how they're going to build it, how they're going to give us our 50,000 square foot of amenity space. Maybe that's a library, maybe it's something else, a community center. I'm interested to see how our quickly increasing policies on LEMUR requirements and market rental requirements, coupled with the inflation that's happening, supply chain issues, affect the multifamily housing starts over the next few years. So I think we're going to see whether or not it's been heavy-handed or whether it works. What I'm not excited about is that we are layering cost onto condos and townhouses. These are the most affordable housing types, but it's really still allowing our single-family housing to get off scot-free. It's giving the ones who can most afford it a bit of a subsidy. So if you're a complex of 60 or less, you have the option of just tacking on an extra couple dollars per square foot. And so for a condo, between the affordable housing costs, the rental requirements and everything else, you could be adding up to $30,000 to a small condo cost. So for someone who's their first time buyer trying to get into the market, adding that kind of cost on, it seems pretty prohibitive, especially when we're not adding that to a single family home when we do a subdivision. You know, it was mentioned that we add, that we pre-zone properties, and we haven't typically pre-zoned properties in the past where we pre-zone and add the density to it. And so I think this is something we really do need to look at, but we still need to look at it within the context of our OCP. We need to make sure that if we're going to add significant density to our plans, that it's going to meet what we can provide as a city. And so that's sewers, sidewalks, water, hospital space, that there's going to be hospital space for you when you need it. So adding density to the city makes sense. We still have a plan in place that is adding density. And so working these pieces together and to make sure that the whole thing flows is pretty important. While we are an island, we're still part of the world market for land supply and housing. And so while we may do some machinations where we do some zoning things, the price of land is still set more than just what we can do with a few little things here and there. The development community will just move elsewhere and build somewhere else. And there still will be the real cost of adding density. When we look at, someone was sharing with me that Oak Ridge complex in Vancouver, that all the amount of density they're adding there is going to require $600 million sewer upgrade. So when we do add our density, we do have to keep pace with it with our other with everything else that supports it. And so it's all a process. And I think this will all start fleshing out more as we go through our OCP process.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Touching on Touchstone, the restorative justice, it's a big success story. The only thing I'm looking for is that in 2017 and 2018, we helped between 43 and 44 offenders. But in the last 2 years, only 21 and 28 offenders. So I'm hoping now that COVID is over, that program can come into full swing. Number 8 is the car hailing fines for passengers. And as Mayor Brody pointed out, that's no longer a appropriate title for this motion. When I made this motion in Community Safety Committee meeting, all I wanted was for us to ask the Public Transportation Board to look at potential fines for passengers. And I thought about removing this from the consent agenda to ask council to reconsider the original matter, but since then I've spoken to councillors and it's not going to pass anyhow. So the only problem with this motion, it is reactive instead of proactive, and that's unfortunate. But it's as good as we can get for now. So hopefully the province will educate passengers to, you know, at least go with a professional service that has, you know, a criminal record check, for example. That'd be a nice thing to know when you're getting into someone's car. So good enough for now, but would have liked to have done better on that. Number 9 is the election procedure. In 2018, we had 1% mail-in ballots, and in 2021, during the by-election, we had 14.5% mail-in ballots. So I'm really pleased that that has been a successful program. And after speaking to staff today, I wanted to double-check that these ballots aren't just, you know, just give them to anybody. They actually have to provide identification and addresses and the whole works. So you don't get a ballot unless you are a confirmed voter. So well done to staff for that. Okay, so the big one. The referral response on proposed mandatory market rental. So the plan is to take it up to 15%. In the staff report, staff did state that we need bold steps to help alleviate the housing crisis. And they used the word bold, not the rest of it. And so the escalating mandatory rental option was mentioned in the report. And that was for 15% market rentals for 60 to 199 units, That went up to 17.5% market units for 60 to 499 units. And then if you were 60 to 500 plus units, you would have to put in 20% market rentals. And as Councillor Wolf pointed out earlier, had we only waited a month for Polygon to go through, we could have had that 20%. So a lost opportunity there. I was really thrilled, though, that the Planning Committee rejected Councillor Hobbs' motion to defer this whole thing to the OCP review. That would have been disastrous. It would have delayed it for probably 2 years. So I was happy that we got that far. I was really considering taking this off the consent agenda and seeing if there was by any chance we could maybe get to that escalated mandatory rental option, but I can see that that just isn't going to happen. But then earlier today, I read the really great report from Mr. Roston, and it hadn't occurred to me that we could do something as simple as requiring 100% rental above single-story commercial buildings. That's a brilliant, simple idea, something we could do today. And when you think about it, the rationale is just so simple that there's already commercial out there. And as I was driving around, I saw the 7-Eleven at Williamson 3 and the one at Steveston at Number Wood that are closed. You can bet we're going to see a redevelopment for those two locations. And I wonder if now isn't the time to put forward a motion to require rentals over single-story commercial buildings. And I was really happy to hear councillors around the table say things like Councillor McNulty said that we should have 14 stories in the city center with commercial at the bottom floor, and that's all coming. And he also said that all we own is the airspace. And you're absolutely right, Councillor McNulty, you're right. And then I was pleased to see Councillor Hobbs mention that 100% rentals is needed. And this report does not go far enough. And I have the same qualms about this as you do. And that we need to find locations for 100% rentals, and there must be incentives. So I think Councillor Hobbs was right about that as well. Councillor Wolf mentioned the Polygon, that we really should have held that up, and we could have gone for a lot more, and he was right about that. Councillor Au mentioned that he was reluctantly supporting this motion, and it was limited and not enough. And he said we need to cool off the land costs, and 100% market rental is absolutely needed. And Councillor Steves mentioned that we need designated areas for affordable housing. So with all of that in mind, I'd like to make a motion that we do require 100% rental, residential rental units over existing single-story commercial buildings upon redevelopment. And I'm not sure if I can make that motion now or later on.
No, you can't make it now. I suggest you take that to Planning Committee.
Okay, I advise I'll give you a copy of this, Councillor McNulty.
All right, with that, I'm going to call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to the two items that were off the consent agenda, and they're both from the Planning Committee, so I'll turn it over to Councillor McNulty as Chair of the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Worship. The first item is a request to revisit the rezoning considerations for an application by Benny Number 3 Road Development for rezoning of property at 4700 Number 3 Road from CA Automobile Commercial to a new high-rise office commercial at 44. And we visited this, I believe, now 4 times. This will be the 4th time. I'm going to read the recommendation, Your Worship, and move it. The Planning Committee recommendation was that the request to revisit rezoning considerations associated with Richmond zoning bylaw 8500 and the Amendment 9216 for the creation of a new high-rise office commercial Aberdeen Village zone and for the rezoning of 4700 Number 3 Road from the auto-oriented commercial CA zone to a new high-rise office commercial zone to remove the rezoning consideration limiting the subdivision of office space be approved, and number 2, Your Worship, that the rezoning consideration be revisited limiting subdivision of office space within the building, and that's item 7 of the rezoning consideration, to the following: registration of a legal agreement on title, limiting subdivision, and that would include stratification and/or airspace parcels of the office space. And this for the 9th and 10th floors, the top 2 floors of the building, no more than 1 straddle lot or airspace parcel per story. That's single owner per story of office space. The second bullet is for 6th, 7th, and 8th floors, no more than 12 straddle lots or airspace per story, and a minimum of 60.4 meters squared or 640 or 650 foot squared straddle lot size. And for the 5th floor, no more than 2 straddle lots of airspace parcels per story, and that's a minimum of 334.5, which is 3,600 square feet of straddle lot size. And number 3, that the new rezoning consideration be added stating city acceptance of developer's voluntary contribution in the amount of $357,044.61 to the city's affordable housing reserve, and I would so move, Your Worship.
Is it seconded? Yeah, so it's moved and seconded. Did you want to
Your
comment?
Worship, the problem with this was the size of the space within inside per story, and we went back and forth, and we did get, and staff did a great job on this one to get economic appraisal of it, and the lift in this one was considered to, with the $800,000 they're paying plus the $357,000 and change, to equivalent for that lift. And the majority of the planning committee agreed to approve this with a lift in that case, as opposed to removing a floor, changing the whole thing, or sending it back.
All right. I've got a question of staff. Can you tell us what percentage of the lift the city is receiving as a result of this motion?
Through your worship, through the additional cash contribution to the city's affordable housing strategy, we are receiving approximately 100% of the land lift generated through the additional density provided. That lift is captured through the additional $350,000 to affordable housing, plus the original $850,000 that was secured through the rezoning to the city's city center facility fund.
Okay, I don't see any more speakers, so I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry? Councillor Day. Go ahead.
The original proposal was for 9 stories, and they were given an extra story, a 10th story, that's worth $1.2 million. And as we've heard, we are going to get pretty much all of that back in the form of affordable housing and whatnot. So that's all good, and I give staff credit for so many times that this project has gone back and forth. I don't think I've ever had a project I've spent more time on. But had we stuck with the original plan, there would have been multiple floors, like 5, 6 floors, that would have had all one level, like 10 to 11,000 square feet, that would have attracted large employers, that would have benefited Richmond big time. If this goes through, the 6th, 7th, and 8th floors would be allowed to have up to 12 straddle lots, and they could be 650 square feet. And the problem I have with that is once it's divided into little pieces of the pie, you can't ever take it back again. So the options of having, large floor spaces that would attract the larger companies, it would just be gone. And there was another project called Atmosphere down the street that is now not being built. So there's an even bigger demand for these large spaces than there was before. Basically, we have a 5% vacancy rate in the downtown core, and that's considered extremely low. So while there may be properties available for offices outside of the city center is where they're really needed because it's so close to the SkyTrain. And this density bonus was a gift, and unfortunately, the developer came back and said, that's not what he wants to do anymore. And I understand that from a profitability point of view, getting the $1.2 million worth of story and still being able to subdivide into what I now calculated as 36 mini office spaces. Now, one of the big problems with this as well is that office space is not subject to the foreign investor tax. So foreign buyers could potentially buy these 650 square foot strata units and no tax would be paid to the provincial government. So we have to look at the bigger picture as well. The game has changed. Yes, there are people still working from home, but in the case of Richmond, only 27% are working from home because of COVID, and those numbers will be changing as we get back to a normal market. Having said that, this is not going to be built until 2024, when things will, with any luck at all, be right back to normal, and when we will require these larger floor spaces. And on top of that, if a builder or an investor or a company buys a floor, leases a floor, they can always subdivide out smaller pieces if they don't quite need 10,000 or 11,000 square feet. So it's not like that option is gone to them. So I feel that we're shortchanging the future of Richmond by not allowing this or by allowing this this change. We should have stuck with the original plan, is what I'm saying. So I won't be supporting it because I think we're limiting our options for the future.
All right, I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf, Councillor Steves, and Councillor Day opposed. And the next item, Councillor McNulty.
Your Worship, the next item is by Parkland Properties for the rezoning at 3660 and 3662 Williams Road from 2-unit dwellings RD1 zone to single detached. And the recommendation from the committee was that the Richmond zoning bylaw 8500 and bylaw 10383 for the rezoning at 3660 and 3662 Williams Road from the 2-unit dwellings RD1 zone to the single detached RS2B be introduced and given first reading, and I would so move.
So it's moved and seconded.
Your Worship, on this particular one, there's some duplexes there, and the developer wants to take that property and subdivide it and put in 2 single-family homes. And
so there's one duplex?
It's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, there's duplex in the front. Mr. Craig, could you give us exactly, because it's more than one? Call it, what do we call it, quadplex as a term?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, there is one duplex on the property. There is a secondary suite in each side of the duplex.
Okay, it's a secondary suite within the duplex. Thank you. Okay, so that is to be changed from that to 2 single-family dwellings.
All right, thank you. Councillor Day.
Shows the location of the property, which is at the corner of 4th Avenue and Williams Road. It's very close to a school, and it's very close to a multifamily unit townhouse complex that used to be a co-op and is now a low income or low affordable townhouse complex. I'm going to oppose this because we are displacing 4 families. There's rental units that have been rented out for decades, and so 4 people are going to lose, 4 groups, 4 families are going to lose their home. And we're going to be allowing a brand new house to be built on both sides of this duplex. Well, 95% of people in Richmond, according to the Housing Needs Report, cannot afford to buy what is going to be built. So once again, we're not serving the public. I think this would be a great location for a smaller apartment building that could take up that area, since we already have high density at the Manoa Village. project, why not make this multifamily, because it's so close to the school, it's right on the bus line, and I think we could do a lot better with this project. So I think that higher density and more smaller affordable units that could be family-friendly are a much better fit than two houses that are gonna probably be worth $1.9 million each. It just doesn't help the needs of the community, and that's what we need to think about with every project that comes across our desk.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through your worship to council, I did attend the planning meeting for both the last item, which came back 3 times, and this one. So I walked the streets around here, saw a lot of activity of people who live in this 4-unit duplex, and a couple things came to me. One is how real close it is to Steve's Elementary, and another one is the open space of that corner. It really makes that area active transportation friendly or open. When you see the style of houses people are building, and the variances that are requested and how far they go up to the property line and how big the fences are. This is a huge open space, albeit it'd be great to house more people in a space like that. But to go from what we have now, 4 units that are affordable for families in this part of Richmond, I think is something to treasure and to protect. And so I will be opposed to this change. I wouldn't be opposed to some of the ones that was just mentioned by Councillor Day, but to go to 2 individual monster homes that'll likely go in here and then get put up for sale right away. It's just not what we need. And again, the housing crisis speaks volumes, yet decisions are made with a status quo mindset, it seems. So thank you.
Councillor, I don't think there's any suggestion of a monster home. I'll go to Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through you, the chair. And this is my neighborhood, actually. I'm almost right on this map. But, and we walk by here all the time, take the grandkids to Minoa Steve's and play, so pretty familiar with the neighborhood as well. Now, I think some of the points made are really interesting in terms of building, a wider variety of housing to meet the needs of various people and to try and make things a little bit more affordable. But being still relatively new in the rookie, I do have a question of staff. When it comes to plans that otherwise meet our requirements and our various OCPs, the neighborhood, have gone through the zoning process, and so for us to, despite what our personal wishes might be for more affordable, more accessible housing for a variety of different people, maybe rental in that area, which could fit maybe in the future. My question for staff, and it might be a legal question as well, is what jeopardy or what grounds do we have to say actually no to somebody who has gone through our processes, abided by all our rules and all our plans, and for us to arbitrarily, without a reason that would be considered in a court of law to be reasonably just and based on our own regulations and zoning laws, for instance, what kind of grounds do we have for that? Do we do that as a regular practice when people have abided by the rules that we have, regardless of whether we actually agree with them or not, because haven't had a chance to change those yet? Is that a fair question for you?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, I'll take a stab at it, and if I get offside, I'll look to Mr. Cappuccino to correct me. In terms of a rezoning application, it is a discretionary council approval, so there is discretion as to council's decision on the matter. In terms of the staff recommendation that's before you with respect to approving this rezoning, we evaluate that and formulate the recommendation based on the official community plan, the zoning bylaw, and council policy. This site is located within the Steveston area land use map. It is designated for single family redevelopment. The city's zoning bylaw has an existing policy which supports the rezoning and subdivision of duplexes into 2 single-family lots. And the city's affordable housing strategy governs the provision of secondary suites within new single-family dwellings. And this application is adhering to those provisions.
All right, so perhaps from a legal point of view, I might ask somebody who's trained to, in the law, to venture an opinion on that if he so chooses.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs. First, I'll point out that given that this is an open meeting, it would not be normal practice for me to provide legal opinion. I will, however, say that zoning is a discretionary matter, as Mr. Craig pointed out.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, I think what it demonstrates to me is when it comes to amendments to our plan, our official community plan, that's a real priority because some of the housing options that we could look at in different neighborhoods and on different arterial roads, I think get held up by the fact that they're curtailed by our plan. And so that's something that obviously will be a priority going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting this. I think a variety of housing creates diversity of population. I think both of these houses are going to have a minimum of 1 bedroom in them. And so it will have 4 families, and maybe you're a family of 1 and that's what it is, but it's a ground level accessible suite for someone possibly with mobility issues to be able to stay in their neighborhood. I don't think that we should be looking at old dated buildings that no longer meet building codes as our affordable housing strategy. I don't think that's it. I think we have a vision to build more affordable housing in the city, and we go with that. And that's when we start looking at redeveloping some of these sites that have a lot of grass, and there's an opportunity to go up, and there's an opportunity to, up zone them, not just down zone them with just rental tenure. So I think we still have a referral out to staff to start actively looking at these real incentives that we can have. And looking at old homes that aren't meeting current code, I don't think that's that should be our affordable housing strategy.
Okay, Councillor Steves.
Yeah, I made my comments in committee, but because of the way the discussion's gone, I'll make a couple of comments now. This is what I was talking about earlier. I think that while the community plan doesn't say we should have higher density, we know that we could have higher density in this area. We're right next to the school, the Manoa Steves and so on. It could be turned down, referred back, ask the owner or developer if they would consider a higher density, and we would simply upzone it to meet that requirement. I don't think that the official community plan is etched in stone that you can't change the plan. And that seems what we keep doing. We can't change the plan until we change the plan. And we didn't do that before. We used to make these changes and then we'd modify the plan later. And I think that's what we've got to do again, is start looking at locations like this and say, yes, we could increase the density. And because it's being sold for a certain price, for a certain density, if we double the density, then we're actually capturing the lift for more affordable housing. So I think this would have been a good example.
I just want to reflect that I noticed that none of the opponents of this application have talked about consulting with the neighborhood. What does the neighborhood think about this? I wouldn't feel comfortable making the kind of change that is suggested just willy-nilly. We'd have to have a very extensive process to it. So if we want to make this kind of a change, I think probably the place to do it. Though I do agree we can make the change. I think the place to do it is to consider it within the OCP, and that's coming up. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried with Councillor Wolf, Councillor Steves, and Councillor Day opposed. All right, that brings us to public announcements. Coming out of the closed, we have an item for additional information on transforming the policing and the community safety in British Columbia. Just a note that council reviewed the provincial report entitled Transforming Policing and Community Safety in British Columbia and endorsed that a letter be sent to the provincial attorney general and the solicitor general, as well as local MLAs, stating that the city of Richmond is not in favor of replacing the RCMP in BC with a provincial police service. Secondly, this is from the Planning and Development Division. Note that there are no DP panel items to be forwarded to the May 26, 2022 DP panel meeting. Therefore, the meeting has been canceled. Now, there are a number of announcements and events that I'd like to put forth. First of all, we have Asian Heritage Month. May is the 20th anniversary, can you believe it? It's 20th anniversary of Asian Heritage Month, and an opportunity to learn more about the many achievements and contributions of Canadians of Asian heritage. The theme for this Heritage Month is 2022 is continuing a legacy of greatness. And it's a reminder for all Canadians to come together to combat anti-Asian racism and discrimination in all its forms. So the Public Library and the Art Gallery are among those who have been hosting events and exhibits to celebrate our Asian heritage and our connections. So go to their website and to social media channels for more information. Then we're going to have a community conversation on homelessness. Earlier today, we announced here in Richmond that we'll be hosting a series of community conversations throughout the month of June. And these are designed to dispel misconceptions and foster inclusion of individuals experiencing homelessness in Richmond. The engaging two-part in-person group discussions will provide a safe, respectful, and neutral place for the community to hear the stories and perspectives of people with lived experience, as well as other speakers. Registration is in fact required, so go to the website of the city for details. Now, the Friends of the Richmond Library is having a book sale on Saturday, May 28th and Sunday, the 29th. That's at the Cambie branch. Sales are cash only and proceeds benefit the Richmond Public Library. And for anybody who's been to one of these book sales by the Friends of the Library, the collection, you can get all kinds of different books. They're in good shape on 100,000 different topics, something for everybody. Now, next week is National Accessibility Week. That's from the 29th to June 4th. The city celebrates the valuable contributions of Canadians with disabilities and recognizing the effort of individuals, communities, and workplaces that are actively working to remove barriers to accessibility and inclusion. Then we have the Participation Community Better Challenge. Richmond is again encouraging everyone to think healthy and be active by joining the month-long Participation Community Better Challenge. Beginning June 1st, the challenge is a nationwide initiative to push families, friends, schools, organizations, and businesses to get active and track their physical activity through the Participation mobile app. So to get that app and participate, go to richmond.ca/participation. Then we have our 15th annual Doors Open Richmond, and that returns from June 2nd to the 5th as a free in-person and online event. We hope that next year we're going to get back to an in-person event, but this year it's still online. Doors Open celebrates cultural diversity and raises civic awareness by offering a look inside 35 sites across Richmond. And that includes places of worship, cultural and civic centers, local businesses, museums, and heritage sites. So if you want the details of that, go to our website /doorsopen. Now, I should tell you that next week is our 5th week. So some of these events are some distance out, but it's before our next council meeting. June 6th to the 12th is Seniors Week. We have over 74,000 residents aged 55 and over, and this is a great way to celebrate with a number of fun events and informational opportunities, both online and in person. So if you want to get the details, go to richmond.ca/Seniors Week. Then we have Let's Talk Richmond public engagement projects. There are 2 such engagement projects on Let's Talk Richmond right now. And I encourage you to visit the site and participate in both of them. Both include in-person sessions. The first one is all about flood protection in Richmond, something that is certainly top of mind. And the second one is on the Stevenson Community Center and the Branch Library, building exterior character. So visit letstalkrichmond.ca for more information and to share your thoughts. Then we have the Philippine flag raising ceremony. The 8th annual Philippine flag raising ceremony takes place on Saturday, June 11th from 9 a.m. to noon on the Richmond City Hall Plaza. This is to commemorate the 124th Philippine Independence Day and the Filipino Heritage Month, which is June. And then we have the Island City by Bike Tour. This is the final event. After a 2-year pause, the 20th Island City by Bike Tour takes place on Sunday, June the 12th. Bike riders have 2 options. The short route is 7 kilometers, and that starts at 11 a.m. If you want to go on the long route, which is 22 kilometers, it starts at 10 a.m., and both routes start and finish at Minoru Center for Active Living. The tour is free and perfect for the whole family, so for details, visit the event calendar on the city website. So with that, bylaws for adoption, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition of the current council.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And Development Permit Panel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the Chair's report for the Development Permit Panel meetings held on April 13th, 2022 be received for information. And Recommendation 2, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development variance permit for the property located at 6560 Granville Avenue be endorsed and the permit so issued.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment? Thank you. We are now adjourned.